The goal of this video is to give other indie authors some food for thought when deciding whether or not to pay for advanced reviews. We're going to review the reviewers. I paid for 3 professional advanced reviews for both of my novels, Crew of Exiles and my second novel, Tall Boy's Son. I paid Kirkus, Clarion, also known as Foreword reviews. I actually don't know the backstory if they merged or whatever, but you can see sometimes it says Clarion reviews and sometimes it says Foreword reviews. Anyway, they're the same entity. And Midwest Book Review. Now, how did I select these? Well, partially they were recommended to me. I did a little bit of research. They seemed respectable. And the reviews that I got for my first book, Crew of Exiles, I thought were pretty decent. I didn't have a lot to compare them to, but I ended up getting some reviews that I was happy to put on the cover. My novel, Crew of Exiles, has on the front cover a quote from my Clarion review. "The prose is humorous and engaging, thick with intellectual inquiries." And I was happy with that. What I was seeking was a cover quote that was unique. It was specific to my book. It couldn't just apply to any science fiction. And something that would be from a name that people might recognize when they picked up my book and think, oh, okay, this is a respectable reviewer, and so I might be more willing to give this book a chance. Now, none of these reviews come free. And honestly, this is a bit embarrassing to admit how much I spent on these. The Kirkus traditional review, 250 words, which will be gotten to you in 7 to 9 weeks, costs $450. And the expanded review, 500 words, same time frame, 7 to 9 weeks, costs $599. The Clarion Foreword reviews cost $579 and take 4 to 6 weeks. And the Midwest Book Review is the cheapest at only $50. We're talking 1/10 of the cost. And they'll get that to you in 10 to 12 weeks. So it does take a little bit longer, and, perhaps they haven't spent as much on the quality of their website. I tease a little bit. Honestly, I respect the old school web design here. In order for reviews to be valuable, they have to be honest. So even though you're paying a substantial amount of money for these, there is no guarantee of positivity in the review. Like I said, I was pretty happy with my reviews from Crew of Exiles. There was some criticism mixed in with the compliments. For example, memorable characters make this narrative's sometimes bumpy ride worthwhile. Clarion only gave the book 3 out of 5 stars, but I was able to pull out those quotes that I really thought were valuable. The prose is humorous and engaging, thick with intellectual inquiries. However, I had a different experience with the reviews that I got for Tall Boy's Son. There was a much more obvious distinction between the quality of the writing in some of the reviews and just a sloppiness of prose in others. I was so upset by the low quality of the writing in particularly one of the reviews that I assumed generative AI had been used in the creation of the review. Now, since that initial assessment, I have gone back and read through all the reviews with a clearer head, and I don't now think that that was the case. I think that a human probably wrote all of the reviews, and perhaps it was just the time constraints, having many books to review, that led to sort of some sloppiness involved. However, the sloppiness came from by far the most expensive review, and I really struggled to find anything in it, positive or otherwise, that I felt that I could take from the review and put on my book. Literally, for the Clarion Foreword review, what I took out, because I thought it was the only thing that grammatically I could put on my book cover, was 4 out of 5 stars. For example, in the Foreword review, there is a sentence, "At Soul's opposite, Trudy is developed in terms of her complicated past." This sentence is a disaster. I would be ashamed to have written it. I have never heard of anyone who is a native English speaker use the phrase, "at name's opposite." Another sentence that bothered me was, "Its prose is rich and informative, fleshing out Soul's surroundings in terms of food printers and advertisements flung onto ceilings." That seems to come out of nowhere. There is no context given for food printers and advertisements flung onto the ceilings. Are those aspects of the world building? Yes, but when they're not contextualized in any way, shape, or form, they seem like arbitrary phrases. Also note, in both of these sentences that I've pulled out, the phrase "in terms of" is repeated. The writing is just sloppy and the sentences are a mess. I would not have been proud to write them, and I certainly I didn't want to put them onto the cover of my book. I didn't even want to put them in the interior. And when I received the second review, which was from Midwest Book Review, I was kind of in an emotional state. I was prepared for the worst. And I was pretty upset with this review as well, but upon rereading it, I actually realized that it's quite fine. It seems like it is genuinely written by a human. It does sort of mostly just rehash what my story is about. There is some awkwardness to this review. The phrase that I actually used on my book cover, even though I find it to be a little bit awkward, or the sentence that I used rather, is thought-provoking in its survey of soul's growth process. Tallboy Sun is vivid in its clashes, intriguing in its blend of special interests, and enlightening in its attitudes and battles. I find the word choice in that sentence to be very, very strange. But at least it's unique, I guess? I don't know. This, of course, though, was the cheapest review, so by an order of magnitude, so I am willing to forgive it a little bit. When I received the third review, which was the Kirkus review, and the second most expensive, pretty close actually to the Clarion cost, what was that I said? $450 compared to $580. This review is amazing. I love this review. In fact, I love this review so much that I made a video of myself reading it and put it up on my YouTube channel. And you can also find the full review here. I will link to all these reviews, and you're welcome to judge them yourself. I'll link them in the video description and pinned comment. This review felt like it was not only written by a human, but it was written by a human who had read my book and put any sort of thought into what they were writing about the book and what they had read. There are interesting phrases that could only apply to the book that I wrote and nobody else's book. And if your review doesn't have that, what is in fact the point? What is the point of all this? So I wanted a quote that I could put on my cover. That was the main thing. Yes, it would be great to link people to these reviews and have them read them and be inspired to read my book. How likely is that? Pretty unlikely. However, the Kirkus review was so thoughtful that I think this is the only one that I would consider spending money on again in the future. One of the sentences in the Kirkus review is, "The premise of an underdog dreamer and space warrior wannabe, almost inevitably a video game addict, thrown into real perilous intrigue is not a fresh idea, but the author's spin on space operas conveys an untypically gritty, desperate, and lived-in feel." That's not even really a compliment, it's just a description of the book. But it's a description of my book, and it is distinguishing my book from other books in a similar genre. I felt seen by this review and this review alone. At a time when generative AI is being used to create so much slop and is always at the forefront of conversations about writing, to actually be seen by a reader is perhaps one of the best compliments that a writer can receive. Now, am I willing to pay $450 for each reader to see me? No, that's completely unsustainable. And honestly, again, it's pretty embarrassing. I know that a lot of authors do not have the resources that I have to pay for anything like this. Which brings me to, was it worth it? Everybody has to decide that for themselves. For me, the Kirkus review, worth it. The others in this case were not, and it was so bad that I will probably not be using those again. Authors, publishing a book is a stressful thing. You have to make a lot of decisions, and there are a lot of people promising you results if only you spend the money. The emotional hooks are hard to resist. After you spent all this time and effort writing your book, are you just going to skimp on advertising? Doesn't your book baby deserve better than that? It is truly hard to resist such things when you have the means to purchase advertising. And it's a very confusing landscape to navigate what is useful advertising and what is not. And the honest answer to that question is it depends on your genre, it depends on your style, it depends on what you want out of writing and publishing. It depends on so many personal factors. I am struggling right now with how to advertise after having rejected Amazon exclusivity. One of the downsides of rejecting Amazon exclusivity is that you cannot run price promotions through Amazon. So I find it difficult to run discounts through by far the largest retail. It's impossible for me to run discounts. I have to run them through smaller retails, let's say. I don't mean lesser. And that's just something that is much more difficult to advertise. Many of the mailing list advertisements, which I found medium success with Crew of Exiles, they either won't run your book unless you are running a price promotion through Amazon, or it's simply very strongly encouraged. I've removed Crew of Exiles from Amazon exclusivity. It's still available through Amazon. It's just not exclusive to them. And so now it's available as an ebook at not only these retailers, but these and more as a paperback, in audiobook. And again, these are even just a subset of all the places that Crew of Exiles is available. Same with Tallboy's Son. I'm not playing Amazon's games anymore, and there will probably be a video about that in the future. Suffice to say, if you don't already know, Amazon is a terrible company that is it's harmful to authors, it's bad for book publishing. It's just so big that it can throw its weight around, and it lured us in initially with convenience. And it needs to change its ways, or it deserves the boycotts that it gets. And I won't be playing Amazon's games anymore. Lastly, what I'd like to wrap up with is another warning. As I was leading up to the publication of my second novel, Tallboy's Son, as these reviews that I had paid for were coming out on the internet, on the Midwest site, the Clarion Foreword site, and the Kirkus site, literally within a week, I was receiving emails through my author website from ostensibly book promoters who seemed to have inside knowledge of the book that I had written but not yet published, saying how great my book was and how it deserves, to be read by lots of people, and how they were going to help me do that and make that happen. I was initially very, very upset that either one of the reviewers or someone else had leaked my book to generative AI. When I delved deeper into the details there, I realized that the information that was being echoed back to me could definitely be discerned from the contents of the reviews that were posted. So I don't think it's that the book itself was somehow scraped by an AI before publication or otherwise. But I think it was just that the reviews themselves were being automatically scraped for information, and then I'm almost certain it was bots were searching for the author webpage and crafting an email and sending it out. I tried to reply to a few of these and, catch them in a lie or whatever, and didn't really get anywhere. Only one of them actually responded to me at all. It did seem sort of a stilted response, as if either English was not their first language or it was some sort of generative AI bot that I was talking to. Some of these even have some really scammy websites. This one right here I found to be utterly ridiculous. I don't know, maybe this is a real book reviewer, but I find it hard to believe that this person has a quote from N.K. Jemisin saying how great they were at promoting her books. If you don't know who N.K. Jemisin is, you should really look her up. She's an amazing fantasy author that really writes some different and interesting stuff. I find it hard to believe that this particular book reviewer who's resorting to spamming my email had her as a client. So, beware of scammers. Seriously consider what your book needs to be successful. Having a quote on the cover can be good. I think that I personally need to carefully consider how important that is. There are certain things that are somewhat expected. We're expected to have a cover quote, right? That's something that books have on them. But is it really? I looked through my bookshelf and found a number of books that were very successful that actually don't have cover quotes on them. We all, authors, indie authors in particular, are stumbling around a lot right now, and there's a lot of concern about slop and everything else. Me personally, I am going to do my best to take a step back, take a deep breath, and consider where I'm focusing my efforts. Considering what I am gaining by spending mental and financial resources advertising my book. Consider spending more resources improving myself as an author. It hurts my soul to not promote Tall Boy's Son. It hurts my soul that the numbers currently are way worse than when I launched Crew of Exiles, my first book, even though I consider Tall Boy's Son to be a much better novel. They're both standalone science fiction. It's not the same story. You don't have to read the first one to read the second one. I am personally very proud of Tall Boy's Son. I want people to connect with it the way I felt like one reviewer did. But again, if you are interested, I will link to these reviews. You can check them out. The Kirkus review is written with passion by a human being, and I love it. The other reviews, I believe they're also written by human beings who were trying to hit a deadline and were forced to read my book for money. And that does not make anyone feel good, and I don't think I will force them to read my books in the future.